Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this roses and leaves macrame bracelet, and this is what mine looks like here. So as you can see, we have these roses and then they're surrounded by these, you could call it leaf clusters, all the way around, and then we just repeat that section all the way along to create a bracelet with it that can then look a little something like this on. So you can see those roses and leaves really give a nice impact all the way around. And I then finished off the ends here using these cord ends, where I then attached my clasp on one end and then my extender chain on the other end there, so it's going to be nice and comfortable and secure to wear as well. And then it looks like this. So what I also think would be kind of fun is to use this basic pattern for something else. Obviously this is a bracelet, but maybe make it into like a choker or a hairpiece or something like that, just to kind of play around with the basic idea. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, the cord that I'm using is this 0.9mm s-lon here in this lovely teal colour. It's going to go lovely with my rose beads. Obviously you can choose whatever combination that you want to. You can also use different kinds of cords and thicknesses. Just be aware that might give you different results, and also just make sure, regardless what you're using, that the cord can go through the holes in your beads. And then as for the beads that I'm using, it's these resin rose beads here. I thought they would go really nice with the combination. First of all, the colours go well together, but also with the kind of theme of the piece, with the leaves that we're going to make, and then basically the roses in the middle. And then to finish off the ends of the bracelet, I'm going to be using these cord ends here. We can then clamp them down so we can attach our findings to them in those little loops. So I'm using lotto claw clasp and extender chain, and of course jump rings to put it all together. Now make sure you check out the description box below the video for the full material list and also any links. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then as for the lengths of cords that we'll need, first of all here I have a length of about 3 meters, and this is the longest one because it's going to get used the most. And then we need another 8 lengths here of about 1 meter and 50 centimeters, and these are a bit shorter because they're not going to get used up quite as much. And then what I've done here with all my lengths of cord is made sure the ends are even, and then I just tied a knot towards one of the ends there. So this is going to be a starting point, and we can use that also to attach to our board. And then we just have one of them that's a longer one and the rest are the shorter ones. So I now fastened all my cords onto my project macrame board here that I'll be working on, and I'm also using these T-pins throughout to hold my work down, makes it easier to work with. And also I just put them down through this knot here to begin with, because then we have all the lengths coming straight down that we can then start working with. Now the first thing we need to do is just separate out our long cord, so just find that first and then bring it out to the side. It doesn't really matter what side you bring it out to, because we're going to keep swapping from side to side anyway. And then I have all the others kind of in one cluster here. So I want to start making a short little section before we get into the main pattern, kind of get it all started. So what we need to do is this long one kind of coming out underneath. Then I need to start making some double half hitches around the others so they're all kind of working as one length for now. So I just bring it around my finger, and then back underneath all these cords and through the loop of itself, and then pull it all the way through, and then you have a little loop there. So this working cord is now just looping around all of these holding cords and tighten it up, and then just repeat the same thing around your finger and through the loop. Bring the cord all the way through and then tighten that right below the previous one. So now for the next one, I want to swap to the other side, so that means I need to bring this working cord underneath all these holding cords, out to the opposite side, but then otherwise repeat the same. We're just kind of swapping hands now. So instead of holding all these cords in my left hand, I'm now holding them in my right hand, and then I'm using my left hand to do the knot with. So around your finger and through the loop, bring it all the way through there, and then as you tighten this, again it's going to get tightened right below the previous one, just like that. And then just one more to make it a double half hitch, and then just tighten that, and we'll keep just tightening them below each other. So basically we're building kind of a row of knots here, which almost turns into a bit of a spine. So now I've done 2, so I bring it underneath all the holding cords back to the other side again, to then repeat. And you just keep going like this until you have just a short little length there, until we then start to get into the proper pattern. Now I have my short little length there, and this is about 1 to 1.5 centimeters. It doesn't have to be too precise, but then what we need to do is start getting into the proper pattern. So first of all, I've just finished mine on the left side. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of how I've ended up. We need to separate out some of our cords here. So I'm taking one cord, and obviously we have this bunch of cords, so just kind of pick one that's naturally towards either side. Then what I'm going to do is separate them out. Just keep them to the side that they're coming out towards naturally, and just bring them straight out to the side there and bring them over. This side here has the working cord as well, so just bring it over that. Then we take the working cord because we need to keep making knots. Right now it's coming out to the left. I need to bring it underneath all the holding cords there to the opposite side, just like this here. So just bring it underneath them, and then we just need to keep making some knots. And it's in the exact same way, so we're kind of just continuing this spine that we're making, but the only difference now is that we have less cords in the middle because we separated two out there, one on either side. So I just make my knot like this here, bring the cord all the way through, just like this. And then you want to tighten this knot in the same way, just making sure obviously these cords, they kind of then get trapped in between the knots. So just get it as tight as you possibly can. Push it, help push it up there using your finger. And then just like before, make a second one. And then also tighten that. Push it up nice and tight. So it's kind of more or less seamless. We just have these two cords coming out. So before making the next knot, we have to separate out another two cords. Just do the exact same thing. Pick out two, one from either side that are naturally towards that side. I'm just going to take these two here. And then this working cord is coming underneath the one we just separated out. Bring that underneath the ones you have left in the middle. So the holding cord's there. And then we just make our knot on the opposite side again, continuing this spine. And now we're just trapping these two new cords in place in between the knots. Push it up nice and tight. And you just want to keep doing this basically until we separate it out almost all of our cords. Now that we then have two holding cords left here, I'm just going to show you the last one. We need to separate them out. I have my working cord on this side. That's where I just ended up. Then what we need to do is bring it underneath the holding cord to the opposite side to make some more knots. And then before I separate anything out, I will make the first knot here. So just around your finger and through the loop. And then make the first half of the knot. Tighten that nicely. And then, before making the other knot, or the other half of it, I'm going to separate one cord out, and I'm going to separate the one that's kind of further towards the opposite side of where my working cord is. So just out towards the right side in my case here. Then I want to make the other half just around the single holding cord that we have left, like that, and then tighten that up nice and tight, because then what we end up with is the holding cord that we just separated out to this right side here in my case, it's now equivalent to the actual working cord, so they're coming out opposite each other, and it's more or less just continuing how we separated all the other ones out. So the next thing we then need to do is start using all these cords that we separated out, but I'm going to work on one side at a time, and it's really up to you how you feel most comfortable. So what I'm going to do is actually just flip my board around, because you can then move that around as well as you're working with it, and we're going to have to keep flipping it curves just to be in a comfortable position to work with. So I'm just kind of flipping it to the side here. I'm just going to start on my left side. It doesn't matter what side you start on, because we're going to flip over to the side and do the same thing. So what I just want to do as well is the cords that I'm not using, make sure I get them out of the way so they don't get in my way. So the other ones here, just push them out of the way so they don't get tangled up. And then I have all these cords coming down from the middle, which is the left side of that here. Just like that. And then also, before I start making any knots, I like to just put a little pin in my work, because otherwise you can see it kind of moves around quite a bit. So just put a pin in here on this end. Just go kind of down through that final knot that we made. Just trying to not damage any of the cords too much. You just need to retighten it a little bit. Something like that. Then we have these cords here, so we need to start making our leaves basically. Now what I'm going to do is start from my right side, so the one that's furthest towards the bottom there. I'm going to separate that cord out, just get it out from all the others, and then all the others are just coming straight down. Make sure they're not tangled. And then I bring this right cord over all the others, and then we need to start making a row of knots here to basically lie along the side, or in this case kind of below the spine that we've made. So make sure you take the very next cord that's coming underneath. Don't kind of mix them up. The very next one here, we need to make a double half hitch with that. So go around your finger and through the loop. And then as you tighten this, it needs to go as tight as possible against the spine there. So to do that, I'm going to kind of just gently push up this holding cord a little bit while I tighten it. And then we need to do another one to get it a full double half hitch. Tighten that again. So that's the first knot. Then take the very next cord that's coming underneath. And then tighten that one. You can see where I'm building a row of knots here. Make sure that's still in there. And the last one. And tighten that as well, making your double half hitch. There we go. So that's the first row of knots that we've made. So we've now run out of cords to continue making this row here. So what we need to do is go back to the beginning. Just make sure this one stays out of the way. So we have the 3 that are coming straight down, and then we have the one that we just used as the holding cord coming out to the side. So to go back to the beginning, furthest to the right, the very first one here, what we actually need to do with this one first is put it out of the way. So just leave that out to the side. Just make sure they don't get tangled up. And then I take the next one in here. So the second one from the right, and then that one needs to come over the others. So this holding cord as well, all you do with that is just bring it straight down. And then the very next one that's coming underneath of the first one, we need to make a double half hitch with that. So we're just starting this row in the same way that we started the previous one. Just like that. Tighten your knots. A double half hitch. Then we take the previous holding cord that's coming underneath to continue the row. Tighten that nicely. Something like that. And you can see again now we've run out of cords to use. So that means we need to repeat the same that we just did. Go back to the very beginning. The very first cord that's coming straight down that we used, that needs to be separated out of the way first. And then the very next one in, which in this case is the middle one out of the 3 that we have left that we're working with, that needs to go over, which now is only the holding cord that we have left from the previous row. And we just need to bring that down underneath and make, retighten that last one, make a double half hitch with that. Because what we're currently doing is basically the first half of the first leaf. Make a double half hitch here, and now we more or less got to the point of it. So this is going to be the first half. So that means we now need to kind of change direction and obviously make the other half, but also connect the 2 halves together. And to do that, we just basically change direction like I said. So I take the cord that was just the holding cord and also just kind of move the board a little bit. So I mean just kind of keep moving it so it's a nice angle to be working with. Then I now from, it was going out to the left side, I'm bringing it towards the right. And then the cord that's coming straight down here, that was the working cord in the row that we just made, that's coming underneath it. And then basically the holding cord that was the holding cord before is coming around, and it's still going to be the holding cord, and the working cord that's coming underneath is still the working cord. So we kind of just swap hands. So make a double half hitch around this holding cord. So you can see as I tighten that, we then get that little point. Let's do another one for the double. Just like that here. So now we have that little point in place. To then start the next row, what we need to do is take the furthest left one, the one that was just the working cord, that becomes the new holding cord for this row here. And then the holding cord that's coming straight out to the right here comes underneath it and is now the first working cord on this row. Just bring it all the way underneath. And then start out that row in the same way, just make a double half hitch with the working cord around the holding cord. Tighten that. Do the double. Just like that there. But as you can see, this row that we're doing now is going to be equivalent to the kind of middle one on the other side there that we did. But it's not quite long enough yet, so that means we need to bring in a cord, and that's going to be the cord from that row there. So the first one that's available from the opposite side that we then left out previously. So bring that underneath and then make a double half hitch with that as well. Tighten that and make sure this becomes nice and tight so it brings the two sides together. And do the other knot to make it a double. And you can see it then brings the two sides together nicely, and that row is now the same as the middle one on the other side. And to start the next row here, I just want to kind of flip my board again, get a better angle to work at. Then we start the next row in the exact same way, so the very furthest left one just comes over the others towards the right in this case here. The very first one that comes underneath we use as a first working cord. Start out the row just like that. And do the other half to make it a double. So you just want to kind of, my pin is a little bit in the way. Actually now because I have a bit of work done I prefer to then put it between my rows as well. So I'm just going to place it here instead. Something like that. It's not going to be in my way so much. So that's the first one. Then we take the cord that was the holding cord from the previous row that you can see it's going straight to the side. I'm bringing it underneath. And then now using it as a working cord to continue this row. Just like this. Make a double half hitch. Once you've done that, to make this the same length as the first one, we need to then bring in that very first cord that we separated out. That's the last one that we bring back in. Bring it underneath, make a double half hitch. Make sure to tighten them nicely so they come as close as possible, the two sides, to obviously form that complete leaf. Do the other half to make it nice and secure. So there we go, we now have our very first full leaf. So then what I'm going to do is just stay on this side for now because I'm already working on it, and we need to make some more leaves because obviously we need it to come down and then meet back up with the spine, and also when we're going to make the other side. So to start the new one, new leaf, all we do is the holding cord from the last row that we just made here, that's coming out towards the right in this case. So what I'm going to do is bring it towards the left over the others, because we need to start the first row in the new leaf, which is the first row that we did in the leaf that we just did there, the very first one against the spine. And you literally just do it in the same way. So this is almost kind of also, you could say, as making the point of the leaf. We're changing direction of this holding cord, and then taking the first working cord that's coming underneath and just doing a double half hitch here, and then making sure that we kind of get a little point in the corner. Tighten that nicely. And then you take the next one to keep building this row. Using one of these working cords at a time. And the last one. So you can see this becomes the same length as the one we just finished the previous leaf with. And they're going to lay right next to each other. Just like that. And you literally just then make this leaf in the exact same way as I just showed you there. So now I ended up making 4 leaves here on that side. You can see then that meets up perfectly with what we're going to continue having, that kind of straight line, the spine down through the middle. So then what we need to do now is go to the other side and basically just repeat the exact same thing. But obviously it's just kind of mirrored because it's the other side. So I'm just going to turn my board to kind of get into position for that. And then you just want to use these cords here to start out the new leaf, and obviously we're just again making this first row to go right against the spine, and you want to make the same amount of leaves going all the way around until they kind of basically then meet up down there. So now I made my 4 leaves here on both sides, and you can see they're meeting up perfectly there in the middle. They're still loose from each other, but that's what we obviously got to connect them. But before we do that, we also need to add in our bead, because we have this cord running down through the center still, right down the kind of hole in the middle there, and this is the cord that we need to add the bead onto. So I already have it here, and just push it all the way down. So it's going to sit right there in the middle, and in this case it's a little rose bead, which then is surrounded by all these leaves. So what we need to do now is, again, we have this one cord in the middle with the bead on. That's going to be the first holding cord, and then we then gradually need to incorporate these back into it, basically the same way that we separated them out, but now it's just obviously in reverse, bringing them back in. So first of all, we just need to separate out which one is the longest cord. So in my case, that's the one that's right at the top on my left side here. So the one that was the last holding cord there, and that's kind of pointing towards the bead. So that's the longest one, so that means that's the one I want to use as the working cord. So just separate that one out. And then first of all, I need to attach this working cord to the single holding cord in the middle. Make sure the bead is pushed up there. So then we make a double half hitch. I'm bringing this working cord underneath the holding cord. We need to make the first half of the double half hitch first of all. So around there in the same way as the other times we made the knot, and then tighten that all the way up to sit against the bead, you can see there, so it can't go any further. Then before I make the other half, I need to bring in the cord from the opposite side, which is also, just separating them out here, the holding cord from that last row. So it's also kind of pointing in towards the bead, so that's the one I want to take first from that side. Just retighten that first half of the knot a little bit. Then I take that length from the other side, bring it in over the working cord, and join it up with the other holding cord there. So I now have two. Then I make the other half, so around both of them, just like this here. Make the other half of that double half hitch, and then tighten that all the way up to sit as close below the first knot as possible. And what I then just like to do before I make any more knots is just take the two holding cords here and just gently pull at them. Try and not undo that knot or anything, just pull at them a little bit to make sure we tighten this up, because we need to get this as tight as we possibly can. You can always retighten the knot a bit as well. And then we brought them in, so we now need to bring the next ones in. So just make sure you separate out your cords here. Find the cords, the very next top one, so this on the left side here in this case is that one for me. On the other side, I'm just going to find that one as well. Separate out the top one of the three that we have left. So just like this here. Then just going to bring them over that working cord and basically join them back up. So now I end up with 4 holding cords in the middle there. Then we need to take the working cord underneath them all and come out to the opposite side. It's a little bit loose, just putting my pins back in. So I take my working cord there, come out to the opposite side, then just like we were making the spine in the beginning, we're now just joining the cords back in. Make your double half hitch. Now make it completely. Tighten that nicely, just as tight below as the previous knot as you can. Help push it up with your finger. Make the other half. Like that. And again, you can always just take the individual holding cords there, just gently tug at them a little bit to help tighten them up. You can see the kind of pulls, because you want this last row on either side and the last leaf that we made to be as close to the spine that we're making now as possible, just like when we started out the leaves up there. So there we go. Take the next one down on either side, join that up with the holding cords over the working cord, whichever side that's on. Make sure you grab the very next one there, and then we take the working cord, bring it underneath, bring it to the opposite side to then make a double half hitch there. The same principle, and then make your knot, tighten it as far up as you can. And it can seem a little bit hard to get this nice and tight, but just kind of work with it the best you can. And like I said, try and pull at these individual cords as well out of the bunch of holding cords there. Just really tighten it up and help push the knots up close together. Make that other half as well, because the other half of the knot is always what kind of secures the knot in place. And just like the other times, I like to just tug at them a little bit to tighten them up the best I possibly can. And then you just move on. So now we have this whole bunch of holding cords. We only have the final ones left to bring in, so I'll bring the final one in from either side, and then take the working cord to the opposite side and make your double hair hitch, the final one here, to join the whole bunch back up. Kind of like to bring the new cords a bit towards the back, kind of hide them away a little bit. Make your knot. Getting a little bit loose on me here. Make your knot nice and tight. And again, you can see we've kind of got it as tight as we can. And it just helps tugging at these cords as well. So there we go. We now have all of the cords that we made the leaves with back in a bunch of all these holding cords and then that single working cord. So we're back in a position now we can keep making a bit of the spine. So that's where we literally just take this working cord, go underneath to the opposite side, make your double hair hitch on that side there. Because what we then just want to do now is create a little bit of space from where we are now to the point where we start the next little section here. And it's really up to you how much of a distance you want between them. But obviously we do just have to have enough so they don't kind of overlap. So just a little bit of space between them before we then start the next one. And you literally just want to do that in the exact same way that I showed you on here already. And you just keep repeating this over and over until you have the length that you want. So I now kept making these little sections here and adding in the roses, and then I reached the length that I want. So here in the end, what I've also done is I just made the same amount of knots around that cord, the spine, as I did in the beginning before I started making any sections, just to get it nice and even. And what I just want to do now is talk a little bit about the length as well, because what I've ended up with is 5 of these little sections here, and the length of this from the first knot to the last knot here, so not including any clasp yet, is about 6 3/4 of an inch. And now obviously the clasp that I'm going to add is going to add some length as well, and different clasps will add different lengths, so it also depends on that. But obviously you might need a different length to suit the size that you need. So what you can do is make an extra one of these sections here to make it longer. Or if you need it shorter than this, you can obviously make one less. Now the only thing with that is that these sections themselves here are quite long individually. So that might not suit completely depending what you need. So what you can also do to just adjust it slightly is actually adjust the knots that you make in between them here, or the ones on the end. So in my case, I've made 5 between each of these sections and also on either end. So basically, after you bring in those last 2 cords, the one on either side from that last section, you then make a knot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's the 5 knots that I've made there. So you can either make less or make more depending if you need to add a bit more length or take a bit length away. And obviously do the same there on all of them if you want to keep it symmetrical still, so the same length between them. So that's just a little tip on how you can adjust the length there. You just need to change it ever so slightly. But then now what we need to do is actually finish off the ends. So first of all, on this end here, which is where we started out, obviously we need to just undo that knot. But then on this end here, it's the same on both of them. And I'm just going to be using these cord ends. Obviously you can finish yours off differently if you want to. I already have a tutorial where I show how to use these. You simply just put these around all the cords and then clamp it down. I like to add a bit of glue as well, and then you have a little loop there where you can attach your findings to, so whatever class that you want to use as well. So I finish off both ends in that way. Like I said, I'm going to leave the link for the tutorial in the description box down below if you do need to use it, but otherwise finish off these ends here and then you're going to have your finished bracelet. So I now finished off the ends of my bracelet here, and I've also attached my clasp and extender chain, and then it's ready to wear. So obviously using the clasp here is going to make it nice and secure as we wear it. And then you just have these roses surrounded by leaves going all the way around your wrist, giving quite a nice impact there. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now if you did, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future tutorials, and also ring that notification bell just to make extra sure. And if you know anyone that might enjoy this also, I would appreciate it if you share it with them. It really does help me out. So I really hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.